Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, bringing you our second game of the week. A holy war between the second-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish and the Boston College Eagles. Before we get started, guys, make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. And also, make sure to check out everything down in that description below. You can go sign up for our expert picks, our against the spread picks for all of the games in this 2020 season. We're 61.5%, hitting 61.5% of our bets over the past 4 weeks. We're coming off an 8-2 week, and we're definitely going to keep that hot streak continuing in week 11. So go check that out. Sign up for our newsletter. All of those exclusive college football offers and analysis right there down in the description that I can promise that you do not want to miss. So let's get started here with the second game of the week with a little bit of a backstory, a little bit of history between the Fighting Irish and the Eagles. For starters, Notre Dame has won 7 straight over Boston College. They're looking to extend that streak to 8. Although many have this pegged as a potential trap game for the Fighting Irish, a potential letdown game for Notre Dame after their thrilling 47-40 double overtime victory over what was then the top-ranked Clemson Tigers. It should also be mentioned that a lot of people like this as a trendy upset pick because this is the red bandana game for Boston College. The annual red bandana game. Got some honorary uniforms. They're going to be debuting on Saturday afternoon. It's going to be a fun one. And this Boston College team is certainly no pushover. A major reason they have not been a pushover, and we're going to touch more on it in a second, but is Phil Jurkovec, the brand new quarterback for the Eagles. And he poses a very interesting storyline because Jurkovec actually transferred from Notre Dame to Boston College this past offseason. So you've got Jurkovec going up against his former team in this one. Now, granted, he wasn't going to see the field anytime soon. Ian Book holding that title and holding that position for a long while. But still, interesting storyline there. It's always fun to see a former player go up against his former team. So that's going to be very fun to watch here. Boston College, we mentioned Notre Dame, their big win over Clemson, and how well they're doing, second-ranked team in the country. The Eagles are 5-3, having alternated wins and losses since they started 2-0. And if the pattern were to continue with the alternating of wins and losses, the Eagles would be due for a loss this Saturday as they defeated Syracuse just last weekend by only 3 points. So maybe we will see a Boston College upset, or maybe we'll see that pattern continue. I know that the guys out in Vegas believe the pattern will continue as they have Notre Dame pegged as a 13.5-point favorite going into this game. And that spread, guys, as always, brought to you by BetNow.eu. That is our favorite place to go place our bets, the best place to go place your bets. BetNow.eu. Go check out that description and go check out that link down in the description. If you use our promo code GRIDIRON, if you use our link down there in the description, you get a 100% sign-up bonus and you get a $1,000 cash sign-up bonus. It's one of the best places to go to place your bets. It's one of the best offers out there out of all of the betting sites. BetNow.eu. They've got the Fighting Irish pegged as a 13.5-point favorite. And again, go check out that link and use our promo code all right there down in the description below. So let's get started here. Let's dive into this analysis. Notre Dame, Boston College. We'll start with the road team like we always do. So we're going to start with Notre Dame here and their offense. You know, I wasn't impressed with the Fighting Irish's offense earlier in the year. I wasn't that impressed. I thought Ian Book was a little bit disappointing, a little bit lackluster. But as the season has gone on, this Notre Dame team has really picked up the pace. And to me, it's all thanks to this guy named KYREN Williams, the sophomore running back, averaging 5.8 yards per carry and already has 740 yards and 10 rushing touchdowns this season. 140 of those yards and 3 of those 10 touchdowns came just last week against Clemson. Overall, Notre Dame is averaging 227.7 rushing yards per game, and I meant no disrespect to Ian Book. I think KYREN Williams has been the boost that this Fighting Irish team needed. Ian Book still putting up some solid numbers. Over 1,500 passing yards, 8 touchdowns to just 1 interception. That's the stat that really impresses me the most. He's doing a great job of taking care of the football. And Book has also added 279 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. We've seen a handful of games where he really tends to take over as the leading rusher sometimes for the Fighting Irish, and there's a chance maybe we see that again on Saturday. Overall, though, with this Notre Dame offense, what I saw last week against Clemson, what I saw in the weeks prior to that, is that this offense finally has all the pieces needed to compete with the best of the best. No doubt in my mind. Ian Book can make the plays. KYREN Williams can make the plays. They're averaging nearly 40 points per game, this Notre Dame team. I know you can say what you want. Clemson's defense wasn't up to par. Clemson across the board wasn't up to par. I do not care. Fighting Irish are legit, and their offense is a major reason why. Boston College, let's look at their offense. Like we mentioned earlier, Phil Jurkovec's the major reason for their success. If he's not there, if he's not at Boston College, there's no way the Eagles, under Jeff Hafley, first-year head coach, no way the Eagles are 5-3. It's not happening. Jurkovec has 2,083 yards this season, 15 touchdowns to just 4 interceptions. So like Book, he's done a great job of taking care of the football. They're averaging 260.9 passing yards per game. The concerning number for me is Boston College is only averaging 106.6 rushing yards per game. That's the bad number, and that's surprising. We knew that Jeff Hafley was not going to run the same offense that Steve Addazio did. Addazio was more of a run-heavy coach, had a guy like A.J. Dillon. But Boston College still had David Bailey going into this season, and I think those rushing numbers are kind of surprising. And David Bailey's drop-off in production, considering he had over 800 yards last year, has been a little bit surprising as well. The one guy you want to watch out for Boston College, the X factor on their offense, if you will, not Jurkovec, it's not David Bailey, but it's Zay Flowers, the top wide receiver for the Eagles this year. 600 yards and 6 touchdowns for the sophomore wide receiver. And all I'm going to say is Jurkovec and Flowers next year could make up one of the best duos, one of the best quarterback and wide receiver duos in the entire ACC. In the entire conference, they might be one of the best duos. If they're already getting this great of numbers now, building this much chemistry now, imagine what they're going to do with a whole nother offseason with each other and maybe finally a normal season. So that's your X factor there. You looked at Notre Dame. One of our keys for them last week against Clemson was to shut down Amari Rodgers. They didn't do a very good job of doing that. Amari Rodgers over 100 receiving yards in that game against the Fighting Irish. They've got to find a way to shut down Zay Flowers. Make sure they don't allow him to go off like he's done all season long. Let's take a look at the defense here. Defense, certainly, I would say a strength, a relative strength for both teams. But Notre Dame, without a doubt, owning that defensive edge. I've always said that if you can hold a team to under 300 yards per game on average, you're doing a pretty dang good job. You're doing a really good job if you're holding a team to under 300 total yards per game. Notre Dame's doing that. Barely, but they're doing it. Fighting Irish allowing just 296.6 total yards per game. The most impressive stat to me, the 85.1 rushing yards per game they're allowing. So Boston College, yeah, their rushing game has not been that great. David Bailey has practically been non-existent, and they're not going to be existent for another week because Notre Dame's not going to allow Boston College to run on them. And for those of you that think they could, everybody can have a great game. Notre Dame just held Travis Etienne, arguably one of the best running backs. Not arguably, he is one of the best running backs in the entire country. They held him to 28 rushing yards on the day. You hold Travis Etienne to 28 rushing yards, David Bailey and Boston College aren't going to go off on you. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen. So Notre Dame's rushing defense, they're up there as one of the best in the country, which means that obviously Phil Jurkovec and this Boston College offense, they're going to have to win the game through the air. Plain and simple. They can try to run, but they're probably not going to have that much success. So the passing game, a little bit shakier for Notre Dame, allowing over 211 passing yards per game. That's fine. There's that balance there. The balance between having a dominating running defense and not lackluster, but allowing more through the air. That's bound to happen. The number that impresses me the most for the Fighting Irish is not the rushing stat. I love that. But also is their pressure and their sacks. Notre Dame has 19 sacks on the year. 19 sacks on the year. Came up with a few big ones last week in the second overtime against Clemson and DJ Uiagalelei. When you create pressure on the quarterback, when you sack the quarterback, you create mistakes. You create mistakes. Bad throws, maybe some fumbles, intentional grounding. Who knows what it could be? But if Notre Dame continues their pass rush like they have all season long, it could be a very long day for this Boston College offense. So that's something to keep your eye on. 19 sacks. It's a very impressive stat. Boston College, their defense. Jeff Hafley, he's a defensive-minded coach. He was hired away from Ohio State. He was the co-defensive coordinator for the Buckeyes last year. So this is his area of expertise. This is his strength here. And Boston College defensively hasn't been bad. 24.6 points per game they're allowing. They're allowing 373 total yards per game as well. And when I look at the numbers, when I look at the averages of passing yards per game and I look at the averages of rushing yards per game, there's not one number that stands out to me as being horrible. Like, oh my gosh, look at this number. Notre Dame's going to be able to exploit that big time. And there's not one major weekend. They're average. They're average. 229.3 passing yards per game allowed. 143.8 rushing yards per game allowed. Although I will say this about Boston College. You look at that. At the beginning of the year, they weren't playing great against the run. They just weren't. Over the last 3 games, and that does include that narrow loss to Clemson. Keep in mind, these are 2 teams that took Clemson down to the wire. Notre Dame beat them. Boston College nearly beat them, was leading 28-10 before losing 34-28, that game being played in Death Valley. But over the last 3 games, Boston College is allowing just 88 rushing yards per game. So I think this defense is getting better. This defense is getting better. This rushing defense is getting better. It's going to be interesting to see, will the rushing defense continue to succeed, and will they be able to shut down a running back like KYREN Williams? And if so, we might see ourselves having a quarterback battle between Ian Book and Phil Jurkovec, a guy that once thought he could be the quarterback at Notre Dame. Gotta love those storylines. Gotta love how things come full circle in college football. So what are the keys to this game? What are the keys to Notre Dame possibly winning and avoiding a letdown here? Obviously a major trap game. I'm not going to disagree with the people that say it is. What is the key for that? And what is the key for Boston College to try to pull off a monumental upset? 2 weeks ago, they took Clemson, the number 1 team in the country, down to the wire, the final seconds. Now they get the number 2 team in the country. Could they work some more magic, but this time come away with the win? Notre Dame, their key is first pressure Phil Jurkovec, the quarterback. Get after him. Get after him. Again, like we said, the more pressure, the more mistakes. Pressure equals mistakes. And even if you don't agree with that, pressure equals long distance. You get a couple sacks in there, you force Boston College into 2nd and long, 3rd and long, it's going to be very difficult to pick up first downs, and the ball's going to go right back to Ian Book and KYREN Williams. Pressure Phil Jurkovec, you have 19 sacks on the year. Listen to Boston College's stats. The Eagles have allowed 22 sacks this season. Offensive line is not all that great. I think that's also a major contributor to why Boston College's rushing game hasn't been as great and hasn't been as good as we've seen in years past. So the offensive line's shaky, and you can bet your money that Brian Kelly and the Fighting Irish are going to do everything they can to exploit that and to create as many negative plays as possible. Negative plays are going to win this game. Another thing, set up the play action with Ian Book. If Boston College hones in on the run, if Boston College's run defense continues to succeed like they have the past 3 weeks, KYREN Williams might not have the best day. Might not have as good of a day as he did last week against Clemson. He's going to have some great runs in there, going to have some breakout runs, and we know Notre Dame's going to continue to feed him, because why wouldn't you? But you do it enough, you're going to set up a great play action pass with Ian Book. And when you do that, go ahead and go take some shots. Go ahead and go take some shots. If you get out there early, you set the tone early, it's going to be very difficult for Boston College to come back and win this game. No doubt in my mind. So take some shots with Ian Book. Set up the play action. We know you're going to use KYREN Williams, and make sure to sprinkle in some great, deeper throws with Ian Book while you're at it. Don't just go short. Do not just go short. For Boston College, their keys. Obviously, you got to protect Phil Jurkovec. If you can't protect your quarterback, you're not going to win the game. That's plain and simple, and that's for every team in college football. You got to protect your quarterback. Another thing Boston College has to do is take good care of the football. And I almost say that like they haven't been. I really should say continue to take good care of the football. Boston College has done a great job of holding on to the ball. They have 8 turnovers this year, so they're averaging just 1 turnover per game. But it should be mentioned that 5 of those 8 turnovers came in one game alone, to Virginia Tech. You take away a few of those, they're averaging less than 1 turnover per game this year. So Jeff Hafley has stressed the importance of ball security. Bill Jurkovec has made fantastic decisions, only 4 interceptions on the year. If you continue to take good care of the football, and maybe Boston College wins the turnover battle, they force Notre Dame into a couple turnovers, the Eagles could have a very good chance of winning this game. You force Ian Book into some mistakes, some interceptions. You force KYREN Williams to get some fumbles. Boston College, they might find themselves in this game late in the third or late in the fourth quarter. So you've got to be able to do that. And like we mentioned earlier in a previous video with Michigan and Wisconsin, like we said for Michigan, we're going to say the same for Boston College, is you've got to make every possession count. You've got to make every possession count. Notre Dame's defense isn't as stingy as some others we've seen across the country. Maybe not even as stingy as Wisconsin's. But Boston College is facing one of the top defenses in the country. They are facing a very stingy one when it comes to the run. So when you get the ball out there, you've got to get points on the board. When you're facing a top 5 team, the number 2 team in the country comes into your house, you're basically 2 touchdown underdogs, you've got to make every possession count. You almost have to play a flawless game. And Hafley knows that, the Eagles know that, and they almost did that a few weeks ago against Clemson. The question is, can they do it again now at home against the Fighting Irish? So what's the final outlook for this game? What's our final pick? Who are we siding with between Notre Dame and Boston College? I think it's relatively obvious who we're going to go with. This game will be close. I believe this game will be close at least for a half, maybe 3 quarters. I'm not really expecting Notre Dame to walk in here and blow out the Eagles. But Notre Dame is going to win this game. I know this is the classic letdown spot. This is the classic area where you just came off a monumental win. You're high on yourselves. You walk in on the road now, and you fall to a team. Again, Boston College is no pushover. They're 5-3, guys. They're good. This is a good team. So this is a spot where Notre Dame could slip up. But I don't think they do. I think right when you think Boston College has Notre Dame on the ropes, right when you think the momentum could shift towards Boston College's way, maybe they need to stop, maybe they've got good field position, Notre Dame and Ian Book make a play that takes all momentum out of Boston College. They take the whole momentum shift. It's here for Boston College, one play, and it shifts here to the Fighting Irish. Ian Book makes the play. Not KYREN Williams, but it's Ian Book that makes a play that really breaks open the game for Notre Dame. And I've got the Fighting Irish winning this game by at least 10 points. At least 10 points up in Chestnut Hill. It's going to be a great one, guys. The reason that it's one of our games of the week. There's a reason it's one of our games of the week, because it's one of those tricky trap games. It's one that everybody needs to monitor. It's going to be interesting to see how Notre Dame responds after such a big win. But I think Brian Kelly and the Fighting Irish answered the call. This is a different Notre Dame team than we've seen in years past, and you're going to see it on Saturday afternoon. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, just like we said at the beginning. And also, like we said at the beginning, make sure to check out everything down in the description. If you love college football, this is the place for you. No doubt about it. The BetNow link, check that out. Our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Check that out. Follow us on our social media for more college football news, information, analysis. If you love college football, everything down there will apply to you and will benefit you in some way. I can promise you that. So make sure to go check it all out right down there. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. Enjoy your college football Saturday, Week 11. And we will see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.